season. So seems like a good fit from a coach who wanted him. Thoughts on Sim's landing spot, Cole?
Yeah, it seemed like Sean Miller, it's funny. We've seen Rick Pitino do it so many times, like players that you're somewhat familiar with from watching them play, and then you bring them along. Like, interesting, Sean Miller taking him down to Texas. I think it's a good spot, good fit. Kudos to Sim, like SEC. I think he's ready for it. I hope he gets all the minutes he wants, everything he's looking for from his new landing spot, and he succeeds.
Yeah, Miller missed out on Conwell, who we wanted to bring from Xavier, who ended up at Louisville. So had a hole to fill at the guard position, and hopefully Sim can step in and show his worth. So best of luck to Sim. Wish him well. R.J. Lewis won the Haggerty Award for Metropolitan Player of the Year. Kadari and Zuby were joining him on the first team. Congrats to those three guys representing our team extremely well. We don't have to mention again the success we had this past season. We could talk about it all off season if we wanted to, but of course those three guys, much deserved. Awesome to see the St. John's University get represented so well at the Haggerty Awards. And then the last piece of news: Josan Sanon declared for the draft. Supposedly this isn't unexpected by our staff. Wants to test the waters, get some good feedback. He's a guy who projects to be an NBA player down the road. So good to get in there, get his feet wet, and see what he has to work on, most importantly. I don't think the staff is assuming this is any indication that he won't be on board this coming fall.
Yeah, you see Josan like constantly in the lab. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but he is a workout machine. I love seeing it. It seems by all accounts that this is not any concern, that he still plans to attend St. John's next year. But good to get feedback, good to dip your toes in the water, to get more NBA workouts. You hope Josan has like a good experience, learns what he needs to improve on, and then comes back ready to kick some butt next year for us.
Absolutely. Agree. It seems like the smart move could only help him out just in the immediate and in the long term. So good luck to Josan there. And then hopefully we see him in the fall wearing some red and white. But let's get to the man of the hour. Excuse me. Our most recent signing. One Dillon Darling. Point guard from Idaho State, like I said, was the Big Sky Player of the Year. Put up some monster numbers. 20 points, 3.5 rebounds, 5.7 assists. 44% from the field, over 35% from three, 81% from the free throw line, where he got there a ton, close to 8 free throw attempts a game. So a guy who knows how to draw contact, has little Stephen Ashworth in his game in terms of finding himself on the floor, drawing free throws, probably at the angst of most opposing teams. But the numbers Dillon put up are very impressive. You see at the very bottom of the screen some efficiency numbers. 61% effective field goal off the catch and shoot. That was 88th percentile in the country. 1.11 points per possession in isolation. That was 86th percentile in the country. So really created off the dribble. Very good handle. Loves to attack left. 0.39 or 0.93 points per possession in the pick and roll as the ball handler. That was 79th percentile. And then lastly, 63% field goal at the rim. For a 6'1" guard who's slight of frame, very impressive how he's able to get in the paint on finish or to draw defenders and spray it out for assists. Cole, your first thoughts here on Dillon Darling.
Yeah, it's hard to know how much stock we can put in the dreaded Big Sky conference numbers. I think the assisted turnover ratio being over 2-1 is good, a good sign for the fact that we were in desperate need of a true point guard. As much as we might want to like criticize the Big Sky and not know how good of competition he was facing and how much we can put stock in these stats, shooting, free throw numbers are going to translate, the field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. 24/7 currently has Dillon unranked in their transfer portal rankings, but has him with a grade of an 85. Just for comparison's sake, Colby King was an 85 2 years ago when he transferred to Tulane. Trista Traore was an 85 last season when he transferred to Rhode Island. Diku Ayu, when he transferred from Iona to St. John's 2 years ago, was an 83. And Dylan Adewale-Wusu was an 89 2 years ago when transferring first to Seton Hall. So do with that what you will. Again, I kind of criticized the Big Sky a little bit. We don't know what we're getting. Obviously, huge step up for Dillon in competition from the Big Sky to the Big East. They did play a few out-of-conference games last year against high major opponents. Against UCLA, at UCLA, 14 points, or It was a 14-point loss, 13 points, 3 assists, most importantly, 0 turnovers. At USC, a 6-point loss, had a monster game, 22 points, 7 assists, 2 turnovers, shot 50% from the field, 1 from 3, and 9 for 10 from the free throw line. And then conversely, had a very rough game at Arizona State in a 7-point loss, 8 points, 3 assists, 3 turnovers, 1 for 11 from the field. So, maybe that's kind of a good barometer, high major opponents, how you could potentially play in the Big East. Obviously, prior to that, played at Washington State in the Pac-12. Not sure what happened that second year. I guess presumably he was hurt, only playing in 3 games, but played a good amount as a true freshman. Numbers don't really jump off the page at you, but again, Big Sky Player of the Year. You really had a hole as any type of real true point guard on this roster, with Ian Jackson being expected to step in and be your point guard despite not really having played that role yet at the collegiate level. So it's good to have this Dylan Darling in your back pocket on your bench as a potential guy that can come in and hold down the fort at the point guard spot.
Yeah, you think at the base level, he's that guy in the back pocket you had, like you said, to allow for Ian Jackson to get some breathers, but also to allow for Ian Jackson to play off the ball some alongside Dillon. And at the best case, I think you've got a guy who's really talented, who you're getting with 2 years left of eligibility. And I think what you mentioned with the Washington State experience, you might look at those numbers in a limited time as meaningless, but I think it's, you can't take for granted the practice time he had against high major guys for over a year. Over 150 minutes as a freshman in Pac-12 play is not nothing. That's more minutes than Glover got this year as a freshman. So it's not that he has no experience playing against high majors. And like you said, he had a few decent showings. I think the Arizona State game, you can watch the extended highlights on YouTube, show really well, really promising. He doesn't look overmatched physically. He's a gritty guy. He hunts down rebounds, which I love. He's not just a guy who impacts the game from scoring. And I've always had a penchant for those left-handed point guards. So I'm excited to see Dillon. I think one thing that's good to note here is with a super high usage rate, and defenses were geared up to stop him, he had a lower turnover rate than both Kadari and Davon did last season at St. John's. So a guy who's proven he can take care of the basketball, and when asked to on a team such as Idaho State, could really fill it up offensively. I got a little fun game here set up for Cole.
Oh boy,
we've heard countless, and I've jumped on this comparisons to Tyler Kolek. You see the lefty slider build point guard from Big East, and it immediately jumps to Kolek, and it's a poor man's comparison, and you hope he could be a percentage of what Kolek was. I was doing some research here, and I found some numbers that I found comparable. On the left side of this chart, you'll see Dylan Darling's numbers. On the right, you'll find another 6'1", 175-pound lefty guard in his third year of college. And let's just compare these numbers in this past season. Dylan averaged 19.8 points per game. This other mystery man averaged 19.7. Dylan shot 57.9 true shooting percentage. This other mystery man, 57.6 true shooting percentage. You see the assists, 5.7 for Dylan, 5.1 for the mystery man. 3-point attempts, 5.2 for Dylan, 5.6. 3-point field goal percentage, 35.6 versus 35.3. 2-point attempts, 8.4 versus 8.9. And then 2-point field goal percentage, 49.4 versus 51.5. Man, nearly identical looking at these 9 categories. Cole, does anybody jump out to you who this mystery man might be?
You got to give me some hints here. What conference was this player in column 2 playing in, putting up these stats?
Oh, he's very, very close to Big East and St. John's fans' hearts.
Interesting. That would not be third. Now, and you gave it away by saying in his third season. So that takes away the person I was thinking. I don't know, man. You got to give it to me.
Well, who are you about to say?
I'm not even going to say because he didn't play 3 years of college hoops. I was going to say a 6'1" lefty weighing 170-ish pounds. Sounds Marcus Levitt-y to me, but I don't think he was shooting 35% from 3 either. So,
well, I mean, who was Marcus Levitt passing to some of those years?
It was Mr. Shamori Pons.
Bingo. This is Shamori's third-year stats at St. John's after Marcus Levitt had gone and left the university. I want to temper what I'm saying here, guys. This is not a comparison to Shamori Pons, the player. This is a just to look at the year he had. Shamari Pons, his junior year at St. John's was almost identical to the sophomore year, third year in college. Dylan Darling just had at Idaho State. I apologize. I think he is more of this scoring gravitational guy than Kolek was. Kolek is a phenomenal passer, and if he's anything like Kolek, I will just count my blessings. Even like Shamari, I'll count my blessings. But this is just a comparison to see how he affects the game. Really can pull defenders out towards the perimeter because he's a threat to score, can drive, can draw too, and can dish to players anywhere on the court. There's a really good 45-minute clip on YouTube of every single one of Dylan Darling's assists this year. You can get a feel for how he finds his teammates. He runs the gamut in terms of how he's able to find his players. Skip passes, dump offs, pocket passes, pick and rolls, passes in transition. Really any type of ability to play make, he showcases that. Again, this isn't the Big Sky, but it's the information we have. So I'm very much looking forward to Dylan. I think next year he could play somewhere between 12 to 16, 20 minutes a game on some nights, prove his worth, and then he's got a chance to really develop and maybe take the reins as a senior. But it was important to find a guard, and we could have held out hope that Boogie would land in our laps if NBA draft doesn't work for him, or there's another guy that pops loose. But I think it was important that St. John's got somebody they could count on, and not only can they count on Dylan, but like I said, I think he's got some real upside to potentially thrive here at St. John's. Hopefully Cole's not too upset with me for bringing up Shamari Pons in that light. Taking a look now at the roster as it stands, you've got 11 guys. Cole also, last Thursday, we talked a little bit about the signing of Imran Suljanovic from Austria, a 6'8" forward who could provide some depth on the wing and in the front court as a shooter. But as it stands now, I think Jackson, Sanon, Sellers, Hopkins, Zuby is the most commonly constructed first five. Mitchell and Darling, probably the sixth and seventh guy, depending on how you want to flesh that out. Maybe Mitchell slides in and you go big and one of those guards steps out, or Darling slides in and Jackson goes to the two. Yet to be determined. Obviously, with Rick Pitino, Ayo might get some starts, Prey might get some starts, Lefty might get some starts. Your first thought when you see this group of players, Cole?
I think the only glaring concern is the point guard spot. I mean, you have two question marks in Darling stepping up in conference from the Big Sky to the Big East, and you have Ian Jackson, who has not played the point guard role yet in collegiate basketball. That averaged 0.9 assists per game last year to 1.3, I believe, turnovers per game. Obviously not a ton with the ball in his hands. Ultimately, obviously, we trust Rick Pitino to put the guys in the right spots where they can see best. But, that's the only – and not to be overly negative, but like we had the same questions last offseason with the 3-point shooting, and then what bit us in the behind and in the NCAA March Madness tournament was 3-point shooting, and that ended our season. You hope that when you're spending $20 million by some accounts on a roster, that you wouldn't have a giant glaring hole. And hopefully Ian Jackson, obviously elite talent, steps in and can 100% handle that and averages a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio and completely holds down the fort as a true point guard. But that seems to be the only real flaw with an otherwise unbelievable national championship caliber roster. The idea of having all this talent on one roster and Rick Pitino's ability to just plug and play around with lineups is so tantalizing. I can't wait for the season. Like, just roll out the balls now. When is November?
Don't go pocket watching on Repol and Pitino. They're already trying to dismay the rumors that they're spending this much money in that NIL, this portal. But like you said, you're not wrong. It's a concern. I mean, it's definitely a concern when your point guards are a guy who never played point and a guy who's stepping up in such a high level. I'm not as concerned as you are, because I think, if we were to get a high level point guard, who wouldn't be here out of this group, and what else that might have factored in and what dominoes might have taken place. I love the group we have. I think, the floor is affected by that point guard question mark, but the ceiling of this bunch is sky high, and it's national championship ceiling,
Literally national championship. I mean, the last I saw, Vegas had us the fifth highest odds for the national championship, which is insane.
I think they had that before Darling. I'm not sure if Darling changes that, but still, to have those reasonable expectations to see St. John's anywhere in the 10 teams listed of the best chances this time of the year for a national championship going into the next season is unreal. So hard for me to have too much complaints, but we're just thinking about what might potentially throw a wrench in the situation, and point guard play is one of them. I happen to, think highly of Darling, and if Jackson doesn't have that smooth transition, then I think having Darling there, and my thoughts on Lefty, I think there's still a way we could really not have Jackson play the point if he's not capable. But I think for us to reach our ceiling, Jackson's going to have to prove to be a real quality lead guard, and Darling's going to have to be right there on the cusp of being capable Big East starter or high level backup point guard. Did you have any thoughts on Imran?
I again, it's kind of the same boat we were in last offseason with Lefty. Like, have I watched the tape? Yeah. Am I super impressed by his 3-point shooting? Absolutely. Kind of what we were saying about Darling earlier. Shooting is going to translate regardless of what that competition is like on that tape that I can't really judge. But I can't tell watching those videos, like, what type of competition level are we talking here? Like, it's tough to judge. But yeah, obviously the stats jump off the page, the points per game, rebounds, his shooting abilities looks crazy. Rick flew out all the way out there just to watch him play.
Yeah. Flew out and drove all the way around the countryside to find him. And he praised his agility, also mentions his ability as a passer. So apparently not just a stand still shooter, but like you said, we'll wait to see how he does against some collegiate competition. But regardless, it seems like the plan is for Rick to kind of supplant the roster underneath with these Euro transfers who may stick around for more than 1 or 2 years and allow him to develop those guys. We'll see the jump that Brian Lefty can make coming into this season. There have been some reports that he's further along than those two were when they came over. So, maybe he can provide some immediate impact. Dillon Mitchell, Cole, I'm going to give you an opportunity because I know you were so excited. You weren't here in the podcast we talked the other night, but just your first thoughts on Dillon Mitchell and how he changes this lineup or this roster.
Our fans already listened to an entire podcast you gushing about Dillon. They don't want to hear me start getting romantic about his style of play. I think it brings a complete, and we've talked about this previously, but a completely different aspect than all the other players that we've brought. His defensive minded approach, athletically, he does things on the court I've never seen. Watching those highlight videos and watching him sort of come from the weak side over to the ball side and block somebody is incredible. Or one dribble fast breaks where he's taken off from just inside of the free throw line and thrown down some crazy windmill. The free throw shooting numbers are terrifying. He doesn't shoot well from deep, but his ability to defend is insane. I think he'll play a lot of minutes backing up Hopkins at the 4. I think he can play at the 5 if we go super, super small. Maybe if Zuby gets in foul trouble or something like that. I think he could also see minutes at the 3. If you surround him with shooters. If Jackson is shooting well at point guard spot and maybe Sanon or Sellers is playing the 2, I think you could see minutes at the 3. He just has so much versatility defensively, switching anything 1 through 5. Like the idea of him and Zuby on the court together and what they would do defensively as a unit, it's mind-boggling. I just think it's a tremendous addition that adds so much to this roster outside of all the shooting and playmakers and scoring that we had added previously. I think it just brings a whole nother dimension.
Yeah, and doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't hurt you. That real only scare is that
sneaky good passer.
It can help facilitating. That really only scares free throw shooting late. But that's why it's so nice to have a guy like Osiah Sellers who, him and Mitchell, you don't look as swaps for positions, but they could both play that 3. They could both be in a lot of the same lineups together, and you could have an interchangeable offensive defensive switch there. Sellers is a 90% free throw shooter, so a guy you can really trust on the floor late. Also doesn't turn it over. So you can see how Rick Pitino is going to have options here to go big, small, offense, defense, a lot of potential to mix and match. Just super excited. I'm not going to let Cole off the hook quite yet there. I got a couple of questions I want to get to the bottom of before we let him go here on this Sunday morning. This incoming transfer class, or we'll include Imran as well, but we're talking about Ian Jackson, Josan Sanon, Bryce Hopkins, Dillon Mitchell, Dylan Darling. Did I miss somebody else? Isaiah Sellers. Which of these guys are you most excited to see?
Ooh. You know, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, the early additions. I think the answer is probably Bryce Hopkins for me. I think what he does on the glass, especially on the defensive glass, like, again, adds a different dimension, allows Zuby to be Zuby and switch so many things defensively, which puts him at times out of position for rebounds when he's guarding guys on the perimeter. I think offensively, he's such a stud. Can he recapture all of that magic that he had prior to these injury issues with Providence? I think the answer will be yes. Obviously, Rick Pitino is going to coach him up. And again, back to like the early adjustments, I think Josan Sanon is another guy who gets lost in all these conversations. Obviously, Ian Jackson is one of the best players to have entered the portal this year, but Sanon was a tremendous addition. Obviously, had quotes when he was first committed, talking about how he wants to be the hardest working player that Rick Pitino has ever coached. His constant Instagram uploads of him constantly working out is so cool, so impressive. I think he's just a tremendous shooter. Obviously, Isaiah Sellers is also a tremendous shooter. Ian Jackson, I'm super interested to see how he's able to handle.
You got to pick one, Cole.
I'm going Bryce Hopkins. Bryce Hopkins is my guy.
Perfect. Tough question to answer. A lot of exciting guys. I would say Jackson, for his immediate impact, what we need from a lead guard next year, and the potential impact they could have on, future years. The noise, the buzz, the future recruits, seeing what a New York City guy can do with the bright lights of New York City shining down on him. So Cole says Hopkins, I say Jackson. There's no wrong answer there. All right. From the guys who left, who do you think's the biggest transfer out? We'll leave RJ out of this discussion because we're still considering him really looking for pro level basketball aside from transferring. But out of the other guys who transferred looking for a different destination to play college ball, what's the biggest loss?
So just talking transfers outs, not talking graduating players?
Correct.
I mean, I think the answer is probably Sim, just from a talent perspective. And, you thought maybe he could provide also some point guard minutes, and that's still sort of a glaring hole on this roster. But what I will say as the answer, just because we haven't replaced him yet, is Vince Iwuchukwu, because we now don't currently have a true backup 5-man at this point. I think Ruben will fill that void and can play the 5, but Vince was really considered your backup center, and you have not found that. Now there are rumors, potential mystery high school or Euro players that might be visiting soon that might be that addition, but I think it's kind of challenging to replace a 7-foot big man who appeared at least somewhat comfortable in a backup role at times. And we have not done that. So yeah, I'll go Vince at this point.
Yeah, I had Vince written down for the same reasons you did. I don't think he was the most talented of the guys who left, but looking at what we have and what would be the best fit for what we're missing, a 7-foot backup center that you could rely on for a few minutes here and there, matchup dependent, really seems like it would be a nice thing to have. We still have 4 open scholarships. I'm sure we're going to add some kind of size, but it's just hard to find a guy who's willing to come in, who's good enough to make an impact when you see the guys in front of you. And, Vince, good luck to him. Hopefully, if it was up to me and he's asking for my opinion, to go down a level and really dominate, but it's probably hard to turn down mega money that he's going to find from some high major looking for a big guy this late in the game.
Yeah, I want to go Sim from a talent perspective, just because it was such a good shooter, and you thought he had the ability to make that huge junior year leap. But when you bring in a Josan Sanon and Isaiah Sellers and Ian Jackson, who hopefully can run the point, but was a tremendous shooting guard previously, you bring in 3 players to replace Sim, all at his position, all that arguably are better or more talented or have proven more at the collegiate level. It's kind of tough to go Sim, no matter how talented and disappointing of a loss that was.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. Who will lead us in scoring? We asked a couple weeks back if we had our leading scorer already on our roster. Now we've got a few more transfers that have come in play. There's a few more candidates for this question. If I put a gun to your head right now and said, Cole, who's St. John's leading scorer next year? Who's your answer?
If you were looking at their previous averages, I think Dylan Darling's the highest average, but I'm not going to go Dylan Darling. I will go tough question. I think Josan Sanon and Osiah Sellers' minutes kind of eat into each other. I think, their roles kind of overlap a little, so I don't think either of them will be on the court enough to score enough to take that answer. I'll go Bryce Hopkins again. I think Zuby also is a potential. I see a huge season for Zuby. But I'll go Bryce Hopkins.
I was going to say Bryce Hopkins as well. That's no good for television. I think Ian Jackson and Zuby are the two other guys that are in contention. Zuby, he's going to get the biggest minutes. His role is already there. He knows what to expect. He doesn't need things run for him. He's going to get 10 points off junk stuff. So if he can improve in other areas, there's a world where he can average 17 plus points a game. Jackson, if he improves from his first season, maybe his scoring, you would think his scoring would rise regardless, but maybe if he were to be a predominantly a shooting guard, it might rise more than it will with him being a predominantly a lead guard. So I'm not sure if he's going to be that high of a scorer to lead us in scoring. But I would go with Hopkins, especially on a per minute basis. He might not get as many minutes as some guys because he's coming off the injury and he's might not be in as good shape as these guys early on. But I think when it comes down to closing time and who needs to get us a bucket, I think Bryce Hopkins is going to be that guy. And I think by and large, it will be pretty consistent. If I had to make a guess today, Bryce Hopkins would be my choice.
Great minds think alike.
Okay, last one here, Cole. Your letter grade. Okay, go on the whiteboard, report card time. Letter grade for our incoming class right now.
A-. And the only reason I don't go A or A+ is because of not being 100% comfortable with the point guard position.
Fair. Tough grader. I'm going A+. Out of everything we lost, okay, and we lost a lot that season we had, we're looking right now at a team that's being projected to be a top 5 team in the country. So I don't think there's any way we get to that point without bringing in an A+ transfer class. Understanding your valid concerns about, where a point guard play might lead to down the line.
So let me ask, obviously we've seen a ton of publicity around what potential preseason rankings might look like. St. John's, we talked previously, top 5 national championship odds. How much do you think of that is roster based versus how much of that sort of high regard is related to Rick Pitino being one of, if not the best coach in all of college basketball?
So I think if we had this exact same the exact same mega haul last year going into his second season, I don't think we'd be getting as much hype. I think we'd be getting a lot of hype. We were the number 1 rated transfer class last year, but it only led to it being a top 25-ish, within the 25 to 28 range. This year with this class, there's no questions asked. It's because of what we did last year. I think you couldn't really single out one particular reason. I think it's a combination of that. It's Rick Pitino. We heard Gary Parrish say, if there's someone who's going to figure out this roster, putting these pieces together, wouldn't you want to trust Rick Pitino? It's the talent. I mean, we've got 2 sophomores who are 5 stars coming into their sophomore year who averaged over 10 points a game. We got 2 forwards who were 5-star guys. One went to Kentucky. One was McDonald's All-American. And we got a player of the year from a conference, who's going to be a junior next year. So the talent is outrageous. I think to answer your question, it was last year's success more than anything that is building up this momentum and allowing people to believe that we're a top 5 team.
Great.
All right. Well, that's 30 minutes, Cole. I know we got you out of bed early here on this Sunday. You got to get back and relax. I got a big Knicks game to go cheer on. New York, go New York, go. I'm not sure when the next time you'll hear from us is. Who knows? Rick Pitino doesn't work to anybody else's time. He might just pull a rabbit out of his hat, and we might have a center by midnight tonight. But next time that someone commits, we'll be here. If it takes a few more weeks till we get our next recruit, we might have to jump on here and bring up some more questions for Cole, or who knows. But until next time, thanks everyone for tuning in. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that jazz. Follow along on Twitter. For Malik Booth, I'm Pat Kane. That's Cole Adshaw.